Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Mandala, which is an abstract card game that came out in 2019. This is a strictly two-player game designed by Trevor Benjamin and Brett Gilbert and published by Lookout Games. This game only takes about 20 minutes to play and it's pretty simple in its rule set. I don't think the theme here is going to help whatsoever, so it's purely a mechanical, abstract game where I'm going to have to explain the rules for you to wrap your head around what's going on here. So the setup looks like this, where you've got this big board, which is actually a kind of a towel, a fabric cloth board in this case. And you've got two mandalas, which are these big circle things here that are divided into three sections. So you've got the mountain area, you've got your opponent's field area, and you've got your field area. And that applies here as well. And each player on their side of the table, they've got these different squares here called the river, numbered from 1 to 6. And you've also got your cup here, which actually starts with two random cards on there, which is going to be all your points at the end of the game. Each player is going to get given a hand of 6 cards, and in turn you're going to take one of 3 actions with the idea of trying to get as many points as you can, either by the time this deck runs out or until someone has played their 6th colour on their river. So the 3 actions are pretty simple, so let's start with the first one. So the first option is to take one of your cards and to play it on one of these mountain spaces. So you can play on either mandala. So let's say, for example, I played on this one here. And whenever I play on the mountain, I can draw up to 3 cards to replenish my hand. So let's say here, I've drawn these 3 cards, bearing in mind I'm capped at 8 cards. So whenever I draw a card in the future now, I'm going to just forfeit that because I've blocked at 8. The second action is to play any number of cards of a certain colour on a field on any mandala. So for example, I could play these 3 orange cards on this mandala here. And this field is basically your claim to the cards in the centre. So you are basically bidding with a certain type of card to claim the ones in the middle. Now, there are some restrictions on what you can play on these areas, because you can only ever have one colour in each of the, over the 3 fields. So because there's an orange here, I could not have an orange card here or here. And the same applies to all the colours. So again, I couldn't play orange cards here because there's already an orange card in the middle. And that's called the rule of colours, which is kind of a thing to restrict you and can actually play quite a pivotal part in what cards you can play and how you are going to manage your hand. And the third action is to simply choose one of your colours and discard as many cards as you want of that type and draw as many back from the deck here, which is pretty simple. So let's talk about how you actually end up scoring points here. So as soon as the 6th coloured card goes in one mandala, then that mandala is destroyed and points are going to be distributed. So the first thing you're going to do is, as soon as that 6 cards played, you're going to calculate how many cards you've got on each player's field. So this player has 4 cards, this player only has 2. Therefore, this player gets first choice at which set of cards they want from the centre. So for example, they might pick these 3 set of greens, and then they are going to allocate that card, or at least the first card of that colour, onto the number 1 slot here and put the remaining cards in their cup. Now what that means is that from now on, every green card this player collects is going to be worth 1 point. And then it's going to go to the other player, so they might choose these oranges, and the same applies, they'll put it on their 1 spot, that will go in their cup. And then it'll go back to the other player, which will take this star card here, and it will be worth 2 points for each card they have here. Now bear in mind, the first card you play in each of these river spots do not count towards scoring. They are simply a placeholder and a marker to show how much that card is going to be worth to that player. All of the remaining cards used to bid for those cards in the centre are going to be discarded, and a new fresh shoe cards are going to be placed on the mountain to start bidding again. And that is essentially the rules for the game. As I said, you're going to keep playing until somebody has played all 6 cards on their river like this, or until this entire deck gets depleted, and then the following mandala being completed triggers the end of the game. And then, of course, once that end trigger is done, you're going to go through your cup of cards, you're going to allocate them to their relative spots here, like so. all the way through all these cards and then calculate your points, bearing in mind that each card of a certain type is going to be worth the amount associated to it here. So as you can see from the rules run through there, the mechanisms themselves are extremely simple. You're just either playing one card in the centre, drawing 3, playing as many cards as you want of a certain colour on either on your side of the field, or discarding cards. However, if there's ever a game that has more than meets the eye, this might just be it. There is a lot of depth here and a lot of things that might not become so apparent when you first read the rules. You really do have to play the game to understand how everything works together, because it's actually an extremely clever game and you have a lot of things to consider. So of course you always want to make sure that you have cards in your hand, but in order to do that you're going to have to play them in the mountains, and that basically makes more offerings to potentially other players to get a certain amount of cards. And on top of that as well, of course you want to be bidding your cards of certain colours in order to claim those cards in the first place, or at least to get priority. But when you do so, you could be throwing away quite a few points, because if you are bidding with these cards here, for example, like I have done here, then that's essentially giving up 9 points for me if I where I could have collected them. So it's a really good idea to collect a certain colour initially and then try to use your lower points cards to bid for the cards in the future. And there's an additional wrinkle as well, where you want to be bidding with the cards that are more valuable to your opponent, because even though a certain colour might not be worth anything to me, or a lot to me, for example, my orange card here is worth 5 points to me, whereas the orange cards are only worth 1 point to this player, so of course they're going to be wanting to throw as many of those cards away as possible by bidding with them or discarding them to stop me from having them. And this is an absolutely compelling decision here. And on top of that, you've got the additional restrictions where if there's a certain colour locked into an area, you cannot use it anywhere else. So because I've got my ones here, this player might really be looking for these cards, meaning that they cannot play it in the mountain because it's already locked into a field. So that one simple restriction adds a whole new layer to the game and can really mess with your opponent if played correctly. There is a lot of meaty decisions here for simply a 20-minute game, and the fact that this game does have so much depth in that very quick timestamp I think is fantastic. This might just be one of the meatiest games I have in terms of its time length to crunchiness almost ratio. This is way up there with the greats. There isn't really often these kind of games that can get this much strategy and this much tactical play done in 20 minutes. You normally find some simple dice game or some simple set collection game, but this one has so much going on with that simple rule set. I love this dynamic scoring. I think it is fantastic where, from game to game, things are going to be worth different amounts of points. And it's just every single card you play in this game is important, and keeping your hand topped up is important to give you more options. You want to be collecting different types so that it gives you more flexibility, but you want to be collecting same types so that you can use them to bid. But of course, people might lock you out by claiming certain spots as well. So yeah, there really is a lot going on in that 20-minute time stamp, and I think that's fantastic. Additionally, despite being so much going on, the analysis paralysis in this game is pretty much non-existent. It's a very breezy and quick game in terms of people throwing stuff down, smashing a bunch of cards down, chucking one in this mandala or that mandala, discarding cards. But you are thinking about everything you do. So there's not many games that have kind of this thought process but still tick along so quickly, which I think is a great triumph. As you'd expect with a strictly two-player game, the player interaction is pivotal here, and it's embedded in everything you do. Of course, as I said, not only are you trying to collect the best cards to you, you're trying to stop your opponent having them as well. And sometimes, you have to weigh up, you might think, well, I'm going to take this card that's worth fewer points to me simply to stop my opponent having it because it's going to be worth a hell of a lot more points to them. So I think this has got a great level of player interaction and a great level of replayability as well, because every game is going to be different. It's going to have a different tempo based on the cards that come out. And yeah, it really has that tactical element to it, as well as some underlying strategy and building towards the cards that are going to be worth the biggest chunks of points. I think the production of this game is good. The cards themselves, they're these square cards which aren't the easiest to shuffle and things, but they're pretty well made, and they're all well differentiated, so if you're colorblind, for example, you can easily tell them all apart. There's 6 different ones, and you're not going to have any kind of scope to confuse them with one another. And I suppose the biggest thing about this game is that the board itself is this cloth mat, which I suppose is a bit of a gimmick. They want to make this game stand out, and I think it does that pretty well. I personally would have liked to have seen a board or something, because this, I don't know, I don't, it just doesn't feel right for me, but I'm not massively against it, and I can see what it's trying to do. I think the board itself, once you know what you're doing, it's all pretty simple. You've got your little play area here, you've got the mountain, you've got your river here, so it's pretty simple. What you do is not confusing, and it's well laid out. And the visuals as well are pretty good. I mean, of course, they're very generic, just these kind of, well, these mandalas, I suppose. And the board art itself, so the box art itself, I think is a bit generic, and I think a lot of people aren't going to be gripped by this box. And I've heard good word of mouth about this game, hence why I picked it up. Whereas if I saw this on the shelf looking like this, I probably would look right past it. So bear that in mind. But of course, if you're probably watching this video, then it's going to get you into the rules and what this game does well. The game does have a great sense of progression, because of course you're always getting new slots allocated, and your strategy is going to kind of pivot on a switch, and you're going to have to try and collect those bigger cards, and you're going to start building towards those. So you're going to start off smaller, start collecting these cards, sometimes just laying them down as placeholders so you can use them to bid, and then work towards getting the big points. But also I love the fact that there's that tension of the endgame triggers, because the deck is pretty thick, so I think the game ending this way is more unlikely than if somebody plays their 6th card, and that tension of when other people are going to do that is quite strong, and you might really want to win a bid to stop them from getting their 6th colour down and ending the game. So yeah, I love that tension between what the other people are doing, and you cannot just ignore someone and let them get away with doing what they want to do, because it can catch you off guard. So I love that underlying tension. You have to be on guard and be ready for someone to do something at any time. So overall, I'm genuinely blown away with Mandala. I think this is an amazing 2-player card game, one that caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Again, I'd heard good words about it, but I've heard a lot of good things about lots of games that I thought were just okay. This one is amazing. Honestly, this is one of the best 2-player games I've played in quite a long time. This is up there with the greats, if not better than some of the classics. I think this is better than games such as Lost Cities. I think this is a modern classic. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. There are so much decisions to be made in such a short time frame. That hidden layer of depth and strategy and tactics is absolutely fantastic. I love this scoring system. It is something that I haven't seen before, and I love it when games just throw a little bit of a spanner in the works, make you think a bit differently about this kind of gameplay. And this game has that. I can't think of any game that is quite comparable to this one. It does feel different. It has a different pacing. It's engaging. It's quick. The turns are fast and snappy, but still meaningful. It's everything. It's got bidding. It's got set collection. It's got this kind of commodity speculation, all in 20 minutes, which is just outstanding. And when I played this the first time, I was thinking, okay, just 3 simple rules. This is probably going to be pretty flatlined and not going to be that great. And by the time, the first couple of turns done in this game, I was just like, oh, okay, now we're talking. This is actually got a lot going on and has a lot to think about, and is certainly the type of game that I enjoy. So funnily enough, it takes a lot for me to enjoy an abstract game, and it takes a lot for me to enjoy a strictly 2-player game. This one is both of those, and I think this is remarkable. So certainly one of the surprises of the year for me. Again, I was expecting good things, but this completely blew it out of the water, and is outstanding. So highly recommended if you like playing 2-player games, and if you like a thinky card game, Mandala is certainly one to check out. So this one gets a strong shield of quality. I'm venturing on giving it an elite shield, so maybe it'll be upgraded the more I play this one. I'll see if it has that long-term legs, but certainly check this one out if you like your 2 players and you like your card games. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.